Right, hello everybody,
Yeah.
welcome to iMoot. This is Stefan from the iMoot team, and I've got the huge pleasure of introducing Miranda Verswijvelen, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. We are so honored to have her here with us. She's an award-winning e-learning specialist, instructional design specialist. She really knows so much about game-based learning, gamification, and I bet if you're in the Moodle community and you've researched gamification and Moodle, you will have come across her name there. So I'm really honored. I'm very much looking forward to the presentation, and I'll hand over to you, Miranda. I'll shut up now. Bye now.
Hi. Yeah. I'm gonna try this better. Hear indicate in the chat whether you can hear me.
You're breaking up again, Miranda. I'm sorry to say. It was fine just before the presentation, wasn't it? Okay. Can the others still hear me? If yes, okay, perfect. Thank you, Miriam. I was just going to suggest that, Miranda, if you just go out and come back in, it should be fine. This gives other people a chance to join us. Okay, I can see Miranda's back. Probably just doing the audio setup now.
Hello, trying this again.
Now this seems to be better.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Very slowly, just in case stuff breaks up again. So today I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my storytelling and scenario in Moodle, and tell you two different approaches I went for. One of the presenter, because it's you. Patient.
This is annoying.
To present.
Oh, sorry. Normally you get turned into presenter automatically. I've changed that now.
I don't have notes. So I'm gonna, yes, I'm go from just telling you to have I'm going to make the Moodle and how my stories and but I did I think I just worked of my Can you hear me now?
Yeah, off and on. Keep talking. It always seems to be that the first 3 words are fine, and after that, it becomes choppy again. But I can tell you, I would give my jacket to Johannes. Okay, I just talked to the iMoot team, Miranda. There's a choice that you can ring in. I'm just going to try. There's a UK telephone number, an Australia one. Yeah, I know. People have been telling me how brilliant your session was, so I was really looking forward to it. Are we doing everything right? The webcam's off, you're not on Wi-Fi. So you can try the phone number. Probably the cheapest is probably the Australian one, isn't it, if you want to do that? If not, it would be a shame, but since you've already done...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear. Can you hear me now? Keep talking.
Okay, so I'm trying this without headphones.
This actually seems to be better.
Okay, so I might just turn the sound off. I'm going to turn my own speakers off. Okay, should be better. Okay, so if you wanted to talk to me, you're going to have to do it by chat.
Okay, right.
So let's run through these first slides. If you can still hear me, can you give me a quick yes no in the chat? Okay, great. Giving you first a YouTube yes. Okay. Closer to me. Okay, no. Without headphones. Oh. What?
Okay. Got you as anonymous here, so let's try this.
Hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and that's so much better. Keep talking. I hope it doesn't break up again, but it shouldn't.
Okay, so this is via my phone. Okay, so Right, so where was I? So I often use stories in my learning, and so stories are used these days quite a lot for marketing as well. So what you see in the slide is just a still from a YouTube video from a charity in Norway, who actually have a story where you have a hidden camera and this little boy is sitting there freezing on the side of the road, and they filmed people to see what they would do. So and that's how they actually entice people to donate to the charity. Another example of stories that I've got is for a completely different topic, the mathematics. So I saw these ones online and I really loved them because they kind of explain in a really funny way love stories of different math concepts. And so they're way easier to remember than the than the real definitions. So I saw a few of those, and I really loved the way people were using stories for this. But obviously, when I work with them in learning, I make them interactive. So I make sure that people can make decisions in the story. So if you would take the example of the Johannes video, you could change it around to giving people some decisions, like what would you do? So I've got a few, and those were a few options of what people did. Some people just gave them their jacket and said they're freezing themselves, and others were just inquiring where his parents were. But anyway, you can use those stories for learning. So, and making a story structure is really, really easy. The starting structure is always, you give a little bit of an intro, and then there's a challenge with decisions, and then you've got the end of the challenge. And when you get to the next bit, you just start over where it ended, give people a new challenge, and so on and so on. So it's actually a really easy structure. Now let's have a quick look at an example to structure a story in that way. This is an example from when I worked at Waitakere Hospital, and we had to make a course for fire safety. So the learning objective that this story was based on in a bigger module was people needed to call a certain number if there was fire outside the building. And that was different than the rules inside the building. So one of the scenarios we have in the module is that you got the story that you go for lunch, and on the parking lot you see a man who throws a burning cigarette in the bin. And so what do you do? And we actually got our subject matter expert to ask around and see what people thought that they should do. And all these answers, we put those as possible decisions in the module. So that's how you can move a learning objective to a story. So these are my planning settings when I build a story. First of all, the most important thing is, really defining what you're about. So your learning outcomes, the behaviors you want to handle, the skills you want people to learn. Then you move that into a plan for your story. So what's the whole goal of my story? What's the setting going to be? Who are the characters? What are the decision moments and the consequences of those decisions? And a bit further in the presentation, I'll go into all these different aspects a bit deeper. And then obviously you start writing your starting story, your dialogue, your multiple choice questions, which are actually your decision moments. In the end, there are always multiple choice questions. In the end, and you decide on visual. Now, in Moodle, obviously, many people are making scenario-based designs and stories and things like Storyline and Captivate and all kinds of fancy authoring software, me as well. But in a few projects that I worked on, I really had to work in Moodle, and also because I love Moodle, I wanted to do it in Moodle. So my first try to make a lesson with a full scenario-based story was the Moodle Moot last year here in New Zealand, together where I presented together with Miriam Laidlaw and Tabitha. And we actually, oops, I'm losing connection on my computer. I don't know why. Can you still hear me? Okay. So I'm losing connection, but my phone still works. Yay. Okay. So what we made was a lesson that was actually a story for to show how you could make an interactive learning piece in Moodle. So I've got this, the Quest of Prince Martin. I've got this on my course page. So if you can take 5 minutes, go to the course page and have a quick look through the Quest of Princess. It's called The Story of Prince Martin, or what is it called again, Miriam? I always forget. Anyway, Prince Martin something. So if you could go there for 5 minutes and then come back and have a bit of a play. I'm actually suspecting that I may have to talk to one of my boys who's playing GTA Online on the Xbox and might be taking up my bandwidth. Bear with me. Sorry about that. Apparently he's not playing. He was playing FIFA, not GTA. All right, let me just have a quick poll. Give me a yes if you've had a quick play with the Prince Martin story. Miriam, I know I'm somewhere in the Wops and it is raining, so that's never good. When it's raining in New Zealand, our internet goes. I don't know whether everybody experiences the same thing, but we do in the White Factory Ranges. All right, so I'm just gonna decide that that's enough people who've been playing around. So I forgot to warn you up front that it contains a lot of very sad puns that we came up with, that we had a lot of fun with this. It's designed for, oops, again, you're gonna have to try it again if you got a prince killed. So basically, the story just branches out to different stories, and our aim was to make people learn about magical creatures. So that was just the topic we came up with to do our workshop. But so in the story, each time the prince has to be rescued or helped by a mythical creature. And so you have to choose the right creature to help him. And by making those choices and seeing the consequences, you actually learn about that creature, because it will go wrong if there's something they can't do, or it will go well if it's, specifically for that creature was really good path. So that's how you learn. But then the whole planning of a story like that, yes, they need the prior knowledge, but basically by going through a few times, you can also pick up on the different characteristics that you want. But you'd have to go through a few times and remember. So this is the overview we made with all the different characteristics of the creatures, so we could actually build our story based on those different features. Ooh, collect badges along the way. Yeah, that would be nice if we could have badges in lessons. Can I zoom in? Oh. No idea. Anyway. So this is an overview of the whole lesson, of the whole structure that we made in a mind mapping software, of where every page was going to go. So as you can see, that's very complicated. And it's very important. So those who have worked with lessons before, sorry, I'm being a bit erratic, but it's because it's a bit strange talking in the phone and at the same time looking at the computer, and I know it just feels disconnected to me. I'm going to try and put the phone down and see if it works better. So the structure of the story is what you see here. Now, those of you who've worked in lessons a lot may know that this doesn't look like the lesson interface at all. The lesson interface is completely linear and gives us page after page. So we learned a lot building this and then trying to put it into lessons. So a few things we did was make sure that all the names of the pages are different. Because Moodle actually allows you to have the same name for pages. So if you don't pay attention, you end up not knowing at all where you are and where you need to change things when you find a mistake. The other thing to make things go faster was that Tabitha made all those pages, and then I just started writing the story in all those empty pages. And we had a lot of review time. Just because you can't look at that structure, you have to look at it in Moodle in a completely different way, like this. So you can see the jumps, but it's quite hard to check them. This is also showing why you really need different titles for your pages, because as you can see, it says, you know, send a message, send a message. There's obviously, but this is the princess message. So if you would call that the same send a message, then you're kind of lost as to where your Moodle page is jumping at that point. Because, as I said, it allows you to give the same name to those pages. So those are a few tips when you're trying to make something like that. Make your structure up front. Then create your pages, make sure they have a unique title that tells you something that's useful, and then start filling them in. Let me quickly go over how I make a structure and the elements for such a story. And then I'm going to show you an example in a different tool that also works in Moodle, which is Twine. So first of all, the characters and the setting of the story. So you've got to be clear that it has the goals of the course. So in our Prince Martin story, you know, it had to kind of work around those mythical creatures. I wouldn't really go into our plausibles because obviously in this case that wasn't true. But if you make another course, you got to make sure that they are realistic for your learners, that they really fit into the situations and what you're trying to teach. So they also need to represent the behaviors or the behaviors that need to change. And I also like to use a few cliffhangers so you can learn about characters in different parts of the story, which is one element to click on that brings you a bit further in the story and gives you a question. What do you think he did? So I've put this example here of what this lady says, because quite often in scenario design, you find these totally strange characters that are not realistic at all and talk about things in a very official way. And very important are your dialogues. Your dialogues are going to be the things that engage people. You've got to make sure that they're normal language and create an interest in, you know, wanting to give an answer to the question, wanting to find out what's next, wanting to find out what everybody is going to say next. And so unfortunately, this is also an example of how many scenario-based designs that you find are written, like totally unplausible dialogue. So you got to make sure that this kind of text doesn't come in. You got to actually, the best way is to just look at the people you are teaching and you are teaching for to see how they would speak. And then your most important thing of your scenarios and your storytelling is going to be your choices. So how do you decide on your choices? You've got to make sure that it's challenging decisions and not just black and white options. You've got to make sure there's gray zones. And the best way to handle that is also, again, to go to the people you're teaching to find out what they would have done, you know, like the example I gave for the fire safety. What are choices they would really make? You know, you got to make them think. So the example I give here is like an unrealistic one, because you obviously immediately know that, you know, there's a problem with John, so what are you going to do? Obviously, in a course that you're doing, especially if that one is about, you know, people management, you wouldn't do the last two. And quite often the answers that you get in quizzes, in scenario design, are built up this way. So you've got to make sure that you've got those great choices that are really nice. Think of that. And to write those, I often use this structure that often gets used for game design. So if you've got 4 options, you can make these 4. There's the yes and no. It's like, it's right, it's not right. But actually, those are pretty boring answers. To be honest, like, yay, this was correct, I'm going to go on. It's much nicer if your choice has a yes result, but it's not completely right. Something else has happened now, or you know, you're confronted with this situation now. And the same thing for the no. It's like you've chosen something, and that was not correct, and you've made it worse. So in games, you'll often find this, you know, that you fight a monster, like, yes, I've killed it, but oh, now there's 3 more. Or no, that was not the right way to kill it, and it's now duplicated itself, or something like that. So you can use that structure really well when you write scenarios for learning lessons as well. Just to go for those slightly more interesting consequences. A quick word about those consequences. You're going to really make people learn from failure and success. What I also like is to make them laugh. You know, some funny consequences are always welcome. That also entices repeat entry, so that people have gone through, like with the Prince Martin story. Like, there's some funny things happening when you do something wrong. So people often like to go back in and try a few different choices to see what happens. That always helps. And very eager feedback, like a few slides before, where you're like, no, that was not the right use of the policy, never really works because it's not realistic. So your feedback has got to be a constant that fits into your story, or just, you know, what happens next because you made that choice. Now let's have a quick look at another tool that I tried to fit into Moodle. I tried quite a few storytelling tools, and so using a lesson and using Twine were the ones that worked best. So who's heard from Twine? Fold, and use another fold. So who's worked in Twine before? I haven't got everybody's answers, but seems like not many people have heard from Twine. So Twine is a free software that you can download, and it allows you to write interactive stories. So mostly text-based, even though there are some options. There's some really cool things with adding some images and using CSS. I found some really cool examples. There's a lady called Mel Holloway who's trying to get the most out of Twine. So you see an example here of what it looks like. So you've got, you know, your little intro story, and then you've got 3 options that you can click on. So where did I make the this Twine for? So I had to make a Moodle course for lecturers who would be supervising students doing research. So, for example, master's or PhD thesis. And we had 3 skills or behaviors that we had to work around, being feedback, support, and time management. So my choices to make this course for tertiary institution were obviously limited to either native Moodle or free software, so that the lecturers could update after I finished working on the course. So this is the logo of Twine. I'll just quickly type it up to put that on my slide. That's the link to Twine. These are my 2 students that I took as examples in my story. So basically, I had 2 students that each had their own troubles with time management. And so in the story, as a player or a learner, you have to choose how to react to certain situations. So for example, in this, the student called Mark, you've just asked him how he's going on his 2 first chapters of his thesis, because they were due like a week ago. And so he seems a bit taken back with your question, and he just says, yeah, I'm still reading, it will be ready. And so you get to choose an answer. And your answers are slightly different. So one of them says, oh, that's great. So how about next week? So you give them some more time. The next one also gives them some more time, but you pressure a bit more. Like, really, I need to know in advance because I need to manage my own time. And then the other one kind of lets it go and says, now tell me something about what you're reading. It's my course, Maureen, that's why it's for Unipick. So when you say, yeah, so please next week, he panics again. And so you get 2 new possible answers. So it basically, so what it does, the story, is it brings you from consequence to consequence, and there's a lot of different paths and different ways also to kind of slightly correct yourself when you weren't completely right in your answer, when it's, you know, caused some problems. But then this is what it looks like. Now it's slightly easier overview than, obviously this is just a small part of what I made for this story. it is slightly easier to see your link than in lesson, but still not fabulous, especially if you've got a lot of jumps. And that is what I had. Now, a number of the same elements apply here. Remember how I said to make clear page names? Same goes for twine. I had a few here that just have a number, not a good idea, and completely lost myself. You know, clear date 1, clear date 3, clear date 2. I really had to make a list for myself because I got completely lost. Then reviewing it was a bit of a nightmare as well, just like with the lesson. The good thing about Twine is that you can actually export your material into a Word document. So you can at least check your text online or give it to check your text in a Word document or give it to someone to review who can track changes. Great. But then you can't import that again. So you have to know where it came from. So not ideal, but it does allow you to make lots more branching without getting so confused within a lesson. So this is some of my scribblings, like where do I go, what's pulled, and then like do I go back, don't I go back? So one of the things I learned was also not to try and be economical and that, you know, try to make one step act as a double thing in different parts of the story. It doesn't work. It's much better to, you know, copy things and make it easy on yourself. So the way I handled that in Moodle, and I don't know why I forgot to put it on slide, but I just embedded it in a page and it works perfect. So from the Twine source file, you can export to an HTML file. And you can either just load that in Moodle as a file, works quite well, or you can put it in a page in an iframe. So first you load it as a file, and then you put that link on a page and embed that. That works as well. So something else that I did was on the page where I had that that Twine story that's just nicely embedded. In a block on the side, I added some guides about feedback and support and time management, so that people could basically look it up if they were, you know, fed up with ending up at a wrong end again. You can actually look things up and try to figure out what the right answer might be. So that's something I really like to do when I make scenario-based designs, is give people a guide on the side so that they can look things up when they're not sure and basically read something and apply it immediately. That's a way I like to work, and that's how I did that in Moodle, by having that Twine with the guides on the side. So I can imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you can probably do the same with lessons. Just have on that page, on the lesson, in the side block, you could have your guides on the side as well. So that's a really good way of handling learning materials as well, that give access to people who have just a little bit of experience and others who are very experienced. It's something that we use a lot at the hospital as well, where graduate nurses and senior nurses have to go through the same learning materials. So it's nice that with scenarios, they then have a choice to either try to answer immediately or look things up. So a few words about your toolbox when you make stories like this. Design and plan, never anything better than whiteboards and pen and paper. There's a number of tools online that you can use. Obviously, there's the Moodle lesson, but then there's Twine. There's a tool called Inkle Writer. There's Chat Mapper, which is mostly for conversations. And then obviously you've got the authoring tools, Captivate, Storyline, where you can make branch scenarios and as well with lots of interactivity. To learn how to write the stories well, you can play games, read interactive fiction, read books, watch movies, watch series, to learn about how to, write good stories, have good turns. I get a lot of my my leads on how to write just from writing sites and from game sites. And I've put a few logos there, and those are three sites or apps where you can play interactive story games. And you can actually also make them, but One More Story game, the tool that they provide is actually quite expensive. Choice of games is free. Choices is mostly if any of you have teenage daughters, they're gonna love it. They're all like teenage love stories. You play it on your phone. It's actually really cool because you see how much you can do with a static image, a little bit of an intro sentence, and 3 choices. And it's quite interesting to see how many teenagers are actually playing these things that are not whiz-bang at all. It's just a static image and reading. So they're reading on their phones. It's said that teenagers don't read anymore. So these are the main things that I wanted to give to you today. This is my email address if you want to reach me, my Twitter, and my website, where I have some blog posts about storytelling and scenarios. And I'm ready for questions, if people have any. Oh, thank you, Miriam, for listening to me again.
Okay, thank you so much for keeping calm, being so professional, Miranda, in the face of adversity. And it's been worth waiting for it because that's been a brilliant presentation. Thank you so much. I really learned a lot. I'm sure the others did as well. So that's been brilliant. Thank you for being with us. The next presentation coming up will be Tabitha and Miriam, who is brilliant for being here when she's having a session in just over 15 minutes. So I'm looking forward to seeing you over there, guys. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, Trish, that's great that you've been able to. Yeah, you had quite a few options to to see the start of this session, as I started over like 5 times.